Hello, and welcome to what's going to be the start of a new series. I've already completed the uh, showcasing Let's Play with Balin's expedition in Moria. I am taking a short break from the one with Aragon, so I will be starting a new one. I'll be going back to the one with Aragon. It's just that it got a bit too much, so I want to break it up a bit just to uh, not get tired of it. Before I begin, I'm gonna talk a bit in this episode because what I want to do, I want to present a few things. Um, if you're not a Lord of the Rings dedicated fan, if you're not that deep in the lore, um, a lot of people maybe watch the films, but not everyone will have read the books. Even those that read the books maybe forgot a lot of things. I myself fall in that category. I couldn't remember a lot of the things I saw in the trilogy that covers uh, the takeover of Erebor by Smaug. I couldn't remember a lot of that stuff. Um, and there's a lot of information about other people that are not as popular in the books, have not been as popularized, a lot of places that aren't well known. Um, so what I want to do is I want to present some of the minor factions in this mod in Crusader Kings 3 Realms in Exile, because some of them are actually quite fascinating, in my opinion. Um, I was just looking here for an option. Let me just quickly pause the recording. I'll look for the option I want to modify. I'll be right back in a second. Right, here I am. I just wanted to find this option with custom kingdoms, which is on by default. I'm gonna turn that off because I've seen custom kingdoms being created in my Let's Plays. I didn't want that to happen again. So, there are some minor factions that not a lot of people know about. If you try to find a Let's Play on the Crusader Kings Realms in Exile mod on YouTube, you're gonna find plenty of Let's Plays with Saruman. You might find some with Denethor. Um, Almost everyone has done a Let's Play with Aragorn, myself included. You're gonna find some with the Dwarves of Erebor or the expedition in Moria with Balin, simply because the Balrog situation is so difficult. You may even find some with some of the other dwarves because they have some special mechanics. Some people will play some evil factions like the Orcs, particularly the ones in Gundabad, the Ashmag dynasty. They have quite a lot of events. Um, but not a lot of people play the minor factions, right? Like you probably won't find a lot of Let's Plays with Dorwinion, with the Realm Master Howin, or a lot of Let's Plays with Dale. You may find some with the elves, because of course you'll find some with the elves. But very few people play, at least on YouTube, very few people will play, say, Arnakor or um, some of the factions in the south. Um, and I don't think I've seen anyone play in the Bay of Ormal area, which is mostly kind of made up by the mod team, I think, to some extent. I'm not sure how much of this is based in lore. Um, but what I wanted to focus on is, if we look at the map here, we can see that there's an area called Rovanion. Gondor has a target here to recover one of the provinces in Rovanion. Um, Namely, it's the Kingdom of South Rovanion, is what it's called on the map. And when Gondor takes it over, depending on what culture is controlling this, it can change the name to Don Runen or something to the tune of that. Um, but if we go into the map, and I'm just gonna quickly load Theoden here, you'll see why in a moment. Uh, if we go into the map, I'm gonna pause this while it loads because it's gonna take a minute to load. So here we are, loaded the map. Everybody knows what the leader mark is. Neighbor north of Gondor. The Rohirrim came to aid Gondor at the siege of Minas Tirith. We will not be playing the Rohirrim. I've only just loaded the map just so we can talk a bit. Um, but the Rohirrim, they have their own culture group, and this is what I wanted to talk about because the mod team uh, that made this mod implemented culture groups in a very wonderful way. There's a lot of lore that you can follow in regards to a lot of things in the lore of Middle Earth. They've done a stellar job, in my opinion, in most of this. But we can follow information about the culture groups and about faiths and about all sorts of things. So, for instance, if we look at the faith, we can see it's an organized Northman faith. And there are holy sites for this, places that are considered holy by the followers of the Rohirric faith. There are other faiths in the Northman group. Some of them are in Rohan itself, like the Eored of Bema. Um, Even the fields of Folduin is also in Rohan. But some of them are not in Rohan. For instance, Kolduinik, or however you say this, this is in Dale, and Aldenan would be in Dorwinion, for instance. Widumanas would be in the Anduin Vale, and so on. So this is going in a lot of places, but they're all called Northman faiths. So who are the Northmen? Well, the Northmen are the ones that populated the plains of Rovanion in the first era. We're in the first age. We're in the third age. So they populated this area long, long ago. By this point in the game. Um, Now the plains of Rovanion have been invaded multiple times by Easterlings, and the Easterlings are present in um, the Empire of Medlo-Shukain. Some of them are in Varyags, in Khand. Uh, some of them have mingled with the locals and so on. So the initial inhabitants of Rovanion are either mixed, small tribes, or have moved on. They migrated away. And we can follow all of this. And the reason I loaded Rohan is because Rohan is populated by the Rohirrim. Now, the Rohirrim didn't appear out of the blue. Um, they were given the area of Rohan by one of the stewards of Gondor um, as a reward for Gondor receiving aid in one of their more brutal conflicts. And we can see here, if we look at the Rohirrim culture, that they diverged from Eothed in the year 6544. And we can click on the Eothed, and there's a description there that says the Eothed were a group of Northmen who flourished near the Vales of Anduin and later in northern Mirkwood. They were faithful allies to Gondor and eventually were the ancestors of the Rohirrim. So we can click on that. Um, we can see they were of Eothed heritage. However, they diverged from Rovanorim in the year 5890. If we load the culture groups, guess what? There's the Rovanorim. There's not a lot of them. There's only this county here and a few counties here, all of whom are broken up and not really a force to be reckoned with. Um, but we can check this a bit further. Uh, we can look because it says in the Vales of Anduin, right? And this is the Anduin River. It flows from the Grey Mountains, where the dwarves used to have a very strong presence, and it flows all the way down to Gondor, basically. We can check this, and if we look at, say, Bjorning, the shapeshifter, um, they're considered Valemen, and the Valemen are also of Northman heritage, and they diverged from the Woodmen. There's the Woodmen, and the Woodmen diverged from Northren, who settled the wild plains of Rovanion, right? So they came from the wild plains of Rovanion, entered Mirkwood, or the Greenwood, as it used to be known, entered Mirkwood, where Dol Guldur is, settled in there, and then left Mirkwood, or some of them moved from Mirkwood into the Vales of the Anduin and settled there. Um, and for instance, we have here the Framling. The Framling diverged from the Eothed, so the same people that ended up being Rohirrim, because they diverged from the Eothed as well. We have here the Leofrings. The Leofrings, who also have multiple faiths. Um, the Leofrings also diverged from the Eothed. So there's a lot of information about who is who mixed with who, and all that kind of stuff. If we look at who to look at, let's look at the Magriag, who are of Easterling culture. If we look at the Magriag, we can see that they formed from the Asdriag and Rovanorim. So they formed by mixing the Rovanorim with the Asdriag, right? They're the in between. If we look at the Asdriag, they diverged from Kikurians. Uh, who are the Kikurians? They diverged from the Yoriag, from Talathrim, and so on. Who are all those people? Well, if we look at, I don't know, the Igath. The Igath diverged from the Talathrim. So if we follow this, we end up at the Talathrim. So they're common people that just diverged from each other, basically. Here's the Kikurians, who diverged from the Yoriag, who diverged from the Talathrim, and so on and so forth. All of these culture groups have mixed. The Dalrengi, they formed from, so in Dale, they formed from Rovanorim and Gramas. So they formed from the Rovanorim and another culture group who also diverged from the Northren. All of these groups mixed and settled in separate areas, but the initial inhabitants were all part of the Northern group of men, basically. Now, Rohan here, the reason I loaded Rohan, if you play Rohan, uh, there's a bunch of decisions that relate to the Riddermark, and one of them is to reunite the Eothed. And there's a bit of a description here. Since the days of Earl and his great ride south, in truth none have reigned over all of the Eothed. Some lagged behind under Leofr, so under Leofr, which is why they're known as Leofrings. Settling the southern Anduin Vale, yep, that's where they are. Whereas some refuse to leave at all, eking out a tough and fragile existence in the lands of the North Anduin. And what this is referring to is the Framlings, because they're in the north, and they're the ones diverged from the Eothed. But in the end, we're all kindred, in spite of what minor differences have arisen between us. If we can bring all our brethren under a single banner, we can claim the mantle of a unified Eothed. And indeed, if we switch characters, so let's switch characters. We're not gonna play under this load because switching characters kills achievements. But if we switch characters to a Leofring group, So these guys here are Leofrings. And we look at the decisions, they also have the decision to reunite the Eothed. And if we load the Framlings, they also have the decision to reunite the Eothed. More than that, the Framlings also have the decision to restore the Eothed kingdom. And I think I'm gonna want to try to play with the Eothed in this Let's Play. I also want to play with the Rovanorim. I've already played with the Rovanorim, and the reason I want to play with the Rovanorim for a YouTube series is because there is an achievement, um, this one, Lords of Brittle and Wind, to restore the kingdom of Rovanion. And we're getting back to this kingdom thing, where we can see that this area here is known as the Kingdom of South Rovanion. And if we click on it, it's part of the High Kingdom of Rovanion, right? So this entire area. Well, okay, so let's look at the kingdom titles again. I can see South Rovanion, but there is no West, East, North, or Central Rovanion at all. It's just the South. So let's look at the empire itself, and we can see it includes the realm of Dorwinion, which is this. We can see it includes the kingdom of Dale. We can see it includes the kingdom of Ivathavult, and so on, the kingdom of Logathavult. But in here somewhere, and the South Rovanian and the Brownlands, but in here somewhere we can see the kingdom of Rovanion, which shares the same icon as the empire title. We don't see the kingdom of Rovanion on the map. And there's a reason for that. It's because the kingdom of Rovanion was broken up by the multiple Easterling invasion. So people that come from Usrievar and from Upper Kant, they invaded the plains of Rovanion repeatedly over time, and they pretty much massacred a lot of the people there. Um, but if we click on things like the Kingdom of South Rovanion, we can see it has a number of duchies in its de jure territories. If we click on the Kingdom of Dale, that has de jure duchies. If we click on the Kingdom of Rovanion, it has nothing. There is no territory attached to it. It does, however, say where its capital should be, and its capital is here. Well, it should be here. It is Wilderness. So there is a let's play here to restore the kingdom of Rovanion. And if you do play as part of the Rovanorim culture group, which is almost gone, like there's only a few counties that still have it. If you load one with the Rovanorim, and this is the Rovanorim, this is one of the Rovanorim. They have their own unreformed Northman faith. Again, they're part of the Northman faith. It's an unreformed faith, which means you need to reform it, among other things. It has a bunch of holy sites, one of them being where the capital of Rovanion would be. One of them is in Dalish lands, one of them is in the south, uh, in South Rovanion. One of them is here somewhere. Temple of where? Afov Drea. I'll find it at some. It's here somewhere, basically. Um, there it is. That's it. And one of them is in Dorwinion. So you need to reform the religion, but more importantly, you also have access to a decision to reclaim the kingdom of Rovanion, and this leads to more. So it's not a very well covered faction. You probably won't find a Let's Play for Rovanion on YouTube. You may or may not, I'm not sure. I couldn't find one. You may find something about the Framlings, but some people even played the Bjornings, but not a lot of people played the minor factions. And the reason why they haven't played the minor factions is because They're difficult to cover in a Let's Play because they're not as dynamic. So, if you play Gondor, there's a lot going on. You have multiple decisions to make. You face an epic enemy in Mordor. You may be up against Isengard. You may be up against the Harad in the south, Umbar, the pirate kingdom. Um, you have a lot of money going on, you have big armies, and so on and so forth. Whereas if, for instance, let's say you play Isengard, you play Saruman. Saruman by default goes evil. He doesn't start evil, he starts good. Um, and you start preparing Orthanc for war, and you start having orcish armies, and so on and so forth. Well, you will find Let's Plays with evil Saruman, but the mod team also implemented a path for good Saruman. And you can play as good Saruman. You can reform Saruman and uh, pull away from his desire to find the One Ring and to dominate Rohan. And you will have Elvish allies, and you won't seek war with Rohan. But it's a very static kind of play. There's a lot of waiting around. Maybe as good Saruman, you get to clear Dunland of evil. Maybe you settle some of Enedwaith. But by and large, it's mostly a waiting game for other things to happen. So it's difficult to cover in a Let's Play. Similarly, in some of the smaller factions, um, they're also kind of difficult to cover because, first of all, they're not very well developed. They don't have, in the sense that their society isn't very well developed. If we look at the Rovanorim, they're tribal, right? And we can look at their culture group, um, at their innovations. They have some of, well, most of the innovations from the Second Age, but only some from the Third Age, none in the Middle Third Age, and certainly none in the Late Third Age. And by contrast, if we look at Gondor, uh, their innovations, the tribal ones are done. Early Third Age is done. Middle Third Age is done. And they're entering the late Third Age, and they've already entered the late Third Age. They're not even entering; they've already entered, and they're starting to research the latest and bestest. Rovanorim is leagues away. Like you, you're definitely gonna suffer because you still have some from the tribal, and you barely have any in the early Third Age. You're leagues behind in research. Um, you're not even feudal, you're tribal, and tribal societies work very differently than feudal ones. Um, so they're not very well developed. They don't have access to the same kinds of income, they don't have access to the same kinds of armies, they struggle early on. They don't have as many decisions. So this is the reason why you will probably not find. Oh, and this is such a good character as well. Midas touched. Oh well. I'm probably not going to be able to load this character again because this character shifts his traits. Um, they're not very well developed and they're difficult to cover in a Let's Play. But I'm gonna attempt to play one of these smaller factions because I think they're very interesting, and I think it will be interesting to see how it feels like to develop tribal societies because. Um, in the one I did in my Let's Play with Aragorn, you don't need to worry about certain things. So, for instance, when Aragorn moves to Gondor, he starts having children with Arwen, and you know that when Aragorn is gonna die, his son is gonna inherit. And the reason his son is gonna inherit, and that's not even in question, is because Gondor uses primogenitura, which means one kingdom, one heir. Um, while the younger children may feel forsaken by being denied an inheritance, this is the best way to ensure we keep a stable realm and it does not get torn apart by succession crises. And they have access to that through the Numenorian legal foundations, which says they can enact the primogeniture law. And this is from the Second Age, right? They're not the only ones who can enact the primogeniture law. There are a bunch of other factions that can do that. I think the Elvish ones can do as well. If we check, yeah, so they can enact primogeniture law as well from the outset. However, the tribal ones don't, right? So if we look at the Rovanorim, they don't have any primogeniture law. It's not here. And in the beginning, what they have instead, if we look at the laws, in the succession laws, titles inherited from the realm's confederate partition. So, confederate partition, upon succession, all titles held by the late ruler will be divided amongst their eligible children, with the player heir always being given the primary title, realm capital, and any de jure titles associated with it. Younger children will be given titles starting with those of the same rank as the primary title. So what that means is that if you hold a kingdom title, no, if you hold two kingdom titles and you have two male children, one of them, the first one is going to inherit your primary kingdom, and the second one is going to inherit the second kingdom. So your realm is going to split apart on kingdom lines. If you're not a king, if you're holding two duchies, then your primary heir is going to get your primary duchy, and the second male heir is going to get your second duchy. Your realm is going to split apart on your death. And that's gonna break up your power effectively. So this is why the Gondorians enact the primogeniture law effectively. So we have a whole different set of challenges when playing as tribal. It's not just the tribal ones that suffer from this. The orcs, for example, they're not tribal, they're feudal. We can see here that they're feudal, but they don't have access to primogeniture law either. If we look at the Grazim, who are in Gundabad, if we look at their innovations, they don't have any primogeniture law. They do have hereditary rule, which can enact the partition law. The partition law is not that much different than Confederate partition. It's just one step above. It's not primogeniture. It's not under the single realm heir. It's under the multiple realm heirs category. What they don't have access to, where was it? I could swear it's this. They don't have access to high partition, right? And they absolutely do not have access to primogeniture. So the realm is going to split apart. You will have succession crises. You face unique challenges depending on which area you start in. Some areas are going to be more difficult than others because you'll be facing a completely different set of enemies, and some are more stronger than others. The Rovanorim one in particular is kind of difficult because you will be having Dol Guldur on your west flank. Dale is a powerhouse in the north. Dorwinion is strong, but is not that strong in the east. But the main opponent of the Rovanorim culture is going to be the Golden Realm of Medlo-Shukain, who is also protected by Mordor. So, you know, you'll be facing huge pressure from Mordor in the south and Medlo-Shukain, and from Dol Guldur, who's also a Mordor client in the west, if you play the Rovanorim. And there's not of Rovanorim around. right? You have to remember that there's only a few counties, whereas the Golden Realm of Medloshukane is immense. Uh, you know, we start with an army of barely 1,000, whereas the Golden Realm has 7,000 from the get-go. So it's these kind of challenges that you're facing, and you can go through these decisions. There are ways to achieve them, and I think that's interesting. I think we should play some of these. But in this Let's Play, I think I'm gonna play the Framling. I've never played the Framlings seriously. I've played them for like 10 minutes or whatever. I've already played the Rovanorim on my own, which is why I have the achievement to uh, restore the Kingdom of Rovanion. I will be doing a Let's Play for the Kingdom of Rovanion as well. It is a very difficult Let's Play. It has some very unique challenges. But I've never played the Framlings seriously. And the Framlings are in a very desperate position. And the reason they're in a desperate position is, first of all, they face a very potent enemy in the Orcs of Gundabad. The Orcs of Gundabad, at the beginning of the game, we haven't unpaused, they don't have a lot of military, and Orcs typically have weak armies anyway. But they have a lot of decisions that relate to the domination of the Kingdom of Gundabad and to the expansion of the Kingdom of Gundabad, because they do have decisions that expand the kingdom westwards at the expense of the Kingdom of Angmar. And they also have decisions that enable the betterment uh, of their army. We can see here, just by looking at this character, that he has weak claims. So they're unpressed on the High Kingdom of the Misty Mountains, so the entire Empire title. They also have unpressed claims on the High Kingdom of the Great Orc War Host. This doesn't have any de jure territories. It's just kind of like a banner to unite all orcs. They have weak claims on the Kingdom of Gundabad, weak claims on the Kingdom of Moria, weak claims on the Kingdom of the High Pass. In fact, this character's grandfather is Azog himself, the Defiler. Um, Azog was actually, if you've watched the trilogy where Smaug takes Erebor and you have the company going back to take Erebor, Azog was not killed by Thorin. Azog was killed by Dane, Uzbat Dane Ironfoot of Durin's folk, who is alive. He is here in Erebor. This is the character that it's Thorin's cousin. This is the character that killed Azog. So Azog wasn't even alive by the time they went to Erebor. Um, Peter Jackson took some creative liberties with that for dramatic purposes, basically. Um, but Azog wasn't even alive, and he held the entire kingdom of the High Kingdom of the Misty Mountains. And if you play the Framlings, one of your major opponents is gonna be his grandson, who is currently in Gundabad. And he's gonna expand. More than likely, he's gonna expand his kingdom, and he's gonna become quite strong. He also has a relative here. It's one of his brothers, Mazog's host. And they're pushing up against Goblin Town and against Moria. And if they do take this, then they're gonna spill over into the Anduin Vale, which is the area where we're gonna be playing in. The Bjornings themselves are gonna be an opponent as well, because Bjorn has quite a few decisions to make himself. He has a very capable army from the start. He's gonna expand it quickly. Um, and we also have orcs in the north that are gonna spill in from the north. The north is kind of weak right now. There's still dwarves in here, but typically the dwarves fail, and typically the orcs spread, and they're gonna start spilling into the Anduin Vale. Um, Depending on how peaceful or not Thranduil is, he may become an opponent. Goblin Town is absolutely going to spill into the Anduin Vale. And so we're gonna face a lot of issues, and I haven't really played Framling that much, so I don't know how well we're gonna fare. The Let's Play may fail completely, but I'm gonna try my best. I'm certainly not an expert when it comes to Crusader Kings 3. There's plenty of things that I don't know how to do. In particular, I'm kind of bad with intrigue. Like I can play stewardship. Excuse me. I can play stewardship. I can play military, even a bit diplomacy. But when it comes to intrigue, it's very difficult for me to envision the path where you could, for instance, infiltrate a kingdom and play around with claims and assassinations so that you could inherit the kingdom in the end. That is difficult for me to envision a path towards that. So I typically fail um, espionage games because I'm not that good at it. But we're gonna try the Framlings. Um, this is a preset character. If we look at his dynasty, I don't know how far back it's fleshed out. It is a bit. It comes from Harwini the Framling, um, and he's a bastard founder. However, um, we can have a look at his previous family. Uh, they're from the house of Lothurling, and we can look at their dynasty, I think, and we can see it goes back a bit, including, as we can see, you may recognize the icon, including to the kingdom of Rovanion, which I just mentioned. They're related to the house of Alxivardia. Um, and it goes up a bit, quite a bit, all the way back to King Vidugavia, who I think that's the end basically. That before that it's just lowborn. Um, but this dynasty has ties into into the Anarioni dynasty, so in Gondor's High King, so related to Aragorn effectively. Um, it spills into Dalish lands. These are this is a duchy in Dale. Um, we can't see all of their children. We can't see all of their relatives because this is a historic layout of the house. But it spills into a number of places, and they're all tied each other, you know, from marriages and kind of things like that. In fact, it spills into King Eorl, right? So we can see here this character here held the kingdom of Anethel and the kingdom of the Eothed and the duchy of the Beornings, right? And his son was Earl the Young, and Earl the Young is the first Rohirrim, and he is the first to hold the kingdom of the Riddermark. So Theoden King, is the is his ancestor is Earl the Young, and we can follow that down the path until we reach him, but that's gonna take some time because their dynasty is also quite large. Here's King Helm Hammerhand, and we can play as King Helm Hammerhand because there is an option for that. Um, and then we can follow the path down through his sister, and it goes down and down and down until we reach King Theoden. Right, so they're all coming from this culture group that used to rule Rovanion, and they used to rule Dale, and they had ties to the king of Gondor, um, and they even held the duchy of the Beornings, and they held the kingdom of Anethel, which is where we're gonna be playing, and they held the kingdom of the Eothed, which we'll be trying to restore, basically. So this is why I've been blabbing quite a bit, just to present all of these connections between the lesser known factions, uh, and the bigger factions. Let me check how long I've been recording. I've been blabbing for 40 minutes. So I'm gonna start a new episode, and I'm gonna load up either the Framlings or the Rovanorim. Probably the Framlings, but I may decide on the Rovanorim. Uh, and we're gonna play around with those because they're quite difficult in the beginning. I'm actually not sure which one is more difficult. It may be the Rovanorim that's more difficult, but the Framlings themselves have their own set of issues. I know they have a fleshed out duchy and a bit of an army at the beginning, whereas the Rovanorim are basically in the dirt. Um, but I think the Framlings are difficult as well because they have Beorling in the south and um, Gondabad in the northwest, and it's gonna be a mess because Beorn tends to grow quickly. He's gonna have a big army fast, and it all ties into how tribal federations work. But I'm gonna put an end to this recording. If you had patience to listen to me blab on for close on to an hour, congratulations, you're made of very stern stuff. Uh, what I don't think I'm gonna do a Woodman Let's Play. I might not. I don't even know if they have any decisions because I haven't checked out all the minor factions myself. Uh, Not really. The only option they have is to become the Aladegan. The Aladegan is the High Kingdom of Nan Anduin. So this is Nan Anduin, um, and it's gonna expand a bit if you play as Woodman. So Burning himself is Valeman, but uh, he has the same decision to make. He has become the Aladegan and not much else. And you need to expand quite a bit to generate this high kingdom through a decision. Because you don't have to form it through a decision. You can just form it. You can just create the title. You would need the kingdom of Anaethel and the kingdom of Anduin Vale, basically. And you can just form it that way. But you have the decision to form it, which includes conquering a lot of stuff, including the kingdom of Angalad. And the kingdom of Angalad is actually in the Greenwood, so you would have to conquer that. Um, you would have to conquer Anaethel, which is the Framlings. You would have to hold the Anduin Vale. You would have to hold all of these duchies and control some duchies in here, basically. And if you take that decision to form um, the High Kingdom of Nan Anduin, then the High Kingdom of the Nan Anduin becomes de jure lord of all of these territories, right? But we've played around with the Empire of Gondor. I quickly presented the uh, in my showcase Let's Play for Moria. I quickly presented the High Kingdom of the Misty Mountains, just as in the last episode. Feel free to check those out. Um, there's a lot of other kingdoms around to play around with, so we're gonna be moving either into the plains of Rovanion or in the Anduin Vale. I'll decide it for my next episode, and we're gonna play around with those. So thank you for having the patience to hear me blab about Lord of the Rings um, social dynamics and religious trends. And I'll see you in the next episode. If you do enjoy my Let's Plays, please feel free to check them out. At the moment, there's only Aragorn and Moria, but I'm gonna make others. Feel free to, and I don't know when you'll be watching this, obviously. Feel free to check out my other Let's Plays. Leave a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying them. I've only recently started my gaming channel, so it would help immensely if you do any of those just to help it grow. Thank you for having the patience to listen to some dude blabbing. like a broken record. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye for now.